The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
You are now logged into WarUp on the WPIAL, featuring your hosts, Greg Warnock and Jeff Upson. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
Welcome into WarUp on the WPIAL. Greg Warnock alongside Jeff Upson as we get you set for the upcoming holiday tournaments. But before we do that, we want to break down the scores from this past week. We got several of them for you for week 2 of the section and non-section action. Let's first start off in the section action in AAA. Subsection 1A, Armstrong over Woodland Hills 66-12. Kiski area over Plum 75-3. Gateway over Woodland Hills 28-19. And Armstrong defeats Penn Hills 48-15. 1B, Greensburg-Salem over Penn Trafford Big 54-16. Latrobe over Norwin 39-30. And how about this one, Jeff? Hempfield over Franklin Regional 64-3.
Yeah, that's a score you don't expect to see.
That was supposed to be for the subsection title, potentially.
Yeah, well, I mean, they had some guys missing. Colton Camacho was not wrestling, but Hempfield's really strong, and Franklin Regionals, this is a rebuilding year for them.
Yeah, Carter Diver was the only one to get a win for Franklin Regional. So Hempfield is set up nicely here as they go into January with 2 big wins to start out the season. Subsection 2A, Bell Vernon over Thomas Jefferson 44-21. Connellsville over McKeesport 59-21. 2B, Peters Township over Baldwin 66-12. Bethel Park over Ringgold 43-25. And Upper St. Clair defeats Mount Lebanon 39-28. Upper St. Clair with more 6-point wins at 4-3 and a tech fall to get that 11-point separation. So it is Upper St. Clair who potentially grabs a second spot there in 2B.
Yeah, and that's a good win for them.
Subsection 3A, Seneca Valley over Knox 67-12. Pine Richland over Highland 66-12. And here's a little bit of a surprise. Probably one of the ones I was surprised most about in the subsection action. Mars defeats Butler 36-31. They each split forfeits at 1 apiece, but Mars had more falls at 4-2. Butler had more of the decisions at 4-2, including a major decision, but those 2 falls is what did it for Mars.
Yeah, and Mars is, they're not a bad team. They're not historically a strong wrestling program, but they're growing in their numbers, and they've got some really good guys on the team, especially Alex Hornfeck. He's the guy who's leading the charge at 145 and is looking to make his first state tournament this year. But no, Mars is, they're not. Yeah, I know you're not used to saying Mars is coming away with these wins, but that's a good win against Butler, especially you look at enrollment numbers. Mars is definitely a team to keep an eye on.
Subsection 3B, North Allegheny over Fox Chapel 63-12. Hampton over North Hills 45-27. Shaler over Indiana 58-21. 4A, Montour over Pittsburgh Central Catholic 42-33. Canon-McMillan over Chartiers Valley 66-6. And Waynesburg defeats Trinity 45-20. Blackhawk in 4B over Newcastle 36-33. Moon over Ambridge 49-24. West Allegheny over Hopewell 45-23. And West Allegheny also beats Ambridge 52-30. Sliding over to AA now in 1A. Fort Cherry over Avella 60-10. Chartiers Houston over South Park 45-30. Burgettstown over Washington 65-6. In 1B, Freedom with a pair of wins. They beat Beaver 50-14 and Central Valley 68-0. And Laurel over Elwood City 33-30. 2A, Best Center over West Green 60-16. Jefferson Morgan over Bentworth 40-34. And McGuffey over Mapletown 72-6. 2B, Mount Pleasant over Fraser 48-12. Elizabeth Forward over York 57-20. And Derry defeats Southmoreland 77-6. That was one we were wondering if Southmoreland could compete with them at all, and Derry showed otherwise.
I said that would be their benchmark for Southmoreland to see where they are at, and I don't know if it's just Derry's that good, which I'm leaning towards that's the case, or Southmoreland's got some issues.
Subsection 3A, Quaker Valley over Avonworth 66-6, South Fayette over Carlinton 66-3, and Keystone Oaks over South Allegheny 63-3. No matches in 3B. Non-section, Burgettstown over Bentworth 54-28. Freedom over Butler 42-36. Good win for Freedom. Trinity over McGuffey 36-27. Waynesburg over Burrell, 36-31, a close one.
That was a good match too. I mean, I was following that one, and that was, man, that talk about a good match. That was a good one.
A couple of notable matches I wanted to mention. Wyatt Henson returns to the Waynesburg lineup. He had been out for the first couple of weeks. He tech falls Ian Oswalt. That shows you how good he is.
And that's two freshmen going at it. I mean, that's, Henson's a freshman for Waynesburg, son of Sammy Henson, from the head coach of West Virginia. And Ian Oswalt is a really stout freshman there too. So that really puts in perspective where Wyatt Henson is. And I think those Henson brothers, between him and his older brother Jackson, they're going to be dangerous.
The other notable result for Burrell, Corey Christie beats Trey Howard in overtime 4-0.
That's a big win for Corey. I know he was disappointed he didn't get on the podium at the King of the Mountain tournament. He lost to actually a freshman from Mifflin County, Trey Kibe, but he actually bounces back and has a good win over Trey Howard, who had a good Beast of the East tournament, finishing in the top 8 there. So good bounce back win for Corey. It's nice to see that he's refocused, and they could see each other again this week at POWERade.
Mount Lebanon defeated Montour 42-33. Derry over Latrobe 35-31. I think the notable match here was a 120. Tyler Simmerman defeats Brady Sherback 6-5.
Yeah, and Ty he's a freshman, and he's tough. And Brady's actually was on his way down to 106, not 108. But so I wouldn't read too much into that. But Ty's he's going to be a hammer for Derry, for the next couple of years for Derry, and I think that's just a good barometer for him to see where he's at.
And one match we would like to dive into a little bit: Canon-McMillan over Kiski area 36-27.
Yeah, and Greg, this was an interesting matchup because there was a lot of things that did not go right for Kiski and a lot of things that did go right for Canon-Mac. And I will note that Kiski was without 3 of their starters. Sammy Starr at 113 was out, and Michael Binney is able to pick up a fall at 113 for Canon-Mac. Isaac Reid, the heavyweight, who was a state runner-up last year, is still out. He had, as we talked about, a blood clot in his lung earlier this year, and still wait to see if he can come back. And his backup, Insco, he did lose. And then Colin Murray as well, up at 182 or 170 range, he was also not in. So, but Canon-Mac had some big wins. Kenny Heyman beats Darren Miller 3-1 at 120 pounds. That was a good one.
Yeah, that's one that really surprised me. The other one was at 220 pounds, Rahali pinning Kuhn in 105.
And I said that. I said, Troy, he can either get pinned or pin somebody. He's a high-risk type of guy, and I'm sure Chris Heater's, not too happy with the way that he wrestled. But, in a big match like that, that's a 6-point match. That's huge. I mean, those 6 points are so big. And a dual meet like that, he's got to be more cognizant of the fact that you cannot give up 6 points. You got to stay off your back. So that was a huge win for Canon-Mac. A lot of people, I was getting a lot of messages on the social media this last week saying, are you going to start giving Canon-Mac some respect? And I certainly am. I mean, I definitely am going to give them respect. I said I thought I needed to see something more out of them, and some of their guys showed up and wrestled really tough. But Kiski, they've got to get these guys back in the lineup if they want to really be where they want to be, and it's a long season for them.
Where do the Southwest region's rankings now go for the WPIAL with Canon-Mac beating Kiski? You got Waynesburg, Seneca Valley in the mix. They were basically 1 point differential. Where do you see a top 4, top 5 now?
Yeah, I mean, I think at least in the state, I mean, you got the District 11 powers, Becca and Nazareth, sort of holding that top 2 spots. But then you have wide open, I would say, with Cathedral Prep, Waynesburg, Canon-Mac, Kiski, and Seneca Valley is in that conversation as well. But Waynesburg is proven to me that they're getting better as the year goes on, and Jackson Henson being in the lineup at 138 certainly helps that. He was not in the lineup when they wrestled Seneca Valley earlier this year, but I still think Kiski, when it comes down to February, I think Kiski's going to be the team to beat.
Even with Waynesburg getting back into that mix with those Henson brothers?
Yeah, I mean, I still think Kiski, if they can get at least two of those 3 starters back in, if they can get Sammy Starr in at 113, I think he's a pretty big game changer for them down there. I think 2 out of 3 starters returning would put them in a good position. But Waynesburg, as I said, Waynesburg, Seneca Valley, and Kiski and Canon-Mac are all going to be battling. I think those 4 are the top teams in the WPIAL.
not to put any pressure on the young man, but I think Isaac Reid is kind of that swing person for Kiski. If he's in the lineup, they win a title. If he's not in the lineup, they may be third, fourth place. He plays that much of a factor.
Yeah, and you hate to say that one wrestler plays that much of a role, when you're talking about the team aspect of it. But Isaac Reid is such a force at heavyweight that he's going to get you 6 points a whole heck of a lot.
Yep.
And not that their backups he's not terrible, but he's not Isaac Reid, right? And Isaac Reid is having those anchors at heavyweight. I always said, if you have a good 220 and heavyweight, that's going to get you 6 points most of the time, you're already set up really, really good.
I'm thinking about the other teams, Canon-McMillan, Seneca Valley, and Waynesburg. I don't see a heavyweight in there that might not give up 6 points to Reid either.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's such a big swing for them to potentially win a championship.
Yeah, I do too. And I think I just think Canon-Mac definitely closed the gap on them they had some, wins that go their way. But, it's a long season. And, if Kiski can get healthy, I still think that they're the team to beat.
That's it for the scores from this past week. Now we want to jump into the tournaments going on. And because we're taping on Wednesday as opposed to a Monday, we do have a tournament actually going on right now. That is the West Mifflin Tournament, the Steve DeAugustino Holiday Classic. It's wrestling today and tomorrow. So the top teams going on right now as of today, Peters Township out in front with 113 points. Hampton in second with 108.5. Mars in third with 92. Also tied for third is McGuffey with 92. And to round out your top five is Elizabeth Forward with 68.5. So that's after day one results. Tomorrow we'll start the semifinals as well as the consolation rounds. Not a lot of surprises, though, in the brackets through day one.
No, I wasn't surprised with many of the results. I know one that we were looking at 113, Jack Bruce beating Freddie Howard from Elizabeth Ford and pinned him in a minute 50. And Jack Bruce is a guy who a lot of people may not know the name, and that's because he was at Kiski Prep for the last 2 years, and now he's back in Blairsville. So he was kind of in a bad position in the seeding. So he took care of business and taking out the top seed, Freddie Howard. So, yeah, Jack Bruce is a really tough wrestler, and I think we could see a potential. I think we will see a potential Jack Bruce and Connor Redinger. Connor Redinger is the freshman from Quaker Valley, and I think those two are going to do battle in the 113-pound finals. But as you said, Greg, there's not a whole lot of surprises here, not a lot of things that stick out on the page for me.
Do you see that as being one of the best matches probably tomorrow? Is that potential 113 final?
Yeah, I think that definitely could be a good match. We look at some other ones. You got John Rocco Gonzalez from Quaker Valley at 132. He'll get either Perkins or Yestick from Ambridge. So I think that could be a good match. And but other than that, you look at it and the guys that are supposed to win are winning. So I wouldn't be too surprised with some of these. I'm not surprised by a lot of these quarterfinal results.
Another tournament that's going to get started tomorrow, it'll be Thursday and Friday, will be the Southmoreland Holiday Classic. Wrestling starts tomorrow at approximately 9:30 a.m. at Southmoreland for the preliminary round. They'll have the preliminary round and then the second round of prelims as well as the first round of consolations, the quarterfinals, second round of consolations, and third round all tomorrow. And then Friday will kick off wrestling action for day two with the fourth round consolation starting at 9 o'clock, semifinals set for 10 o'clock, and then the POWERade Champions and Championship finals are set for 4 o'clock. The consolation semifinals are going to run, I think, right after the semis as well as the consolation finals. So not much of a break in between there. They're just going straight through, but they do have the finals set up where it is just a standalone mat for the championships. Some of the teams participating in that tournament, you got Burgettstown, Butler, Best Center, Shark Houston, Elwood City, Fraser, among others. So there's a good amount, just reading through here. Mount Pleasant, they're usually there every year. Southmoreland, Southside, West Allegheny, West Green, Upper St. Clair. So a good amount of WPIAL schools here at Southmoreland.
Yeah, that's always a tough tournament. That's sort of one of the bigger ones this year, and I believe Eric Knopfcenter from PA Power is going to be there for at least some of that, while we're covering POWERade. So it's always a fun tournament.
Speaking of POWERade, that is the next tournament that's coming up this week as well. That is going to be Friday and Saturday, and we'll have full coverage. Make sure you stay with us here on PA Power Wrestling. The wrestling action will get underway at 8:15 a.m. on Friday, so a nice early start. Quarterfinals are set to start at 7:30 on Friday, 6 o'clock for the second round consolations. And on Saturday, the semifinals are set for 11 a.m. with the fourth round consolation starting at 9:30. Consolation finals are at 4:30, and the finals are at 7. And speaking of POWERade, there are seeds out, and we'll dive into the brackets weight by weight and tell you a little bit about where the wrestlers are. We'll first start at 106 pounds, and your top seed, Curtis Phipps of Norwin.
Yeah, Curtis Phipps is a returning state medalist. He was 7th last year, and I think he's really set himself apart being at 106 this year as a sophomore. He's currently ranked number 1 in the state by us. And he's going to have his hands full, though. There's a lot of talent here at 106, and there's 2 guys that are very intriguing to me because both of them wrestled 113 pounds last year. That's Brady Sherback and Kyle Burkholder. Both these wrestlers were 113 pounds throughout all of last season. They actually wrestled in the WPIAL quarterfinals, and Kyle Burkholder actually came away with a fall over Brady in a minute 55. Kyle would go on to qualify for the state tournament. Brady fell short. So both these guys are down to 108, which you normally see guys going up as they get older. These 2 have gone down. So that's an interesting dynamic here. I don't know how much they're sucking down to get to 108. I know I talked to Brady earlier this year at the PA Power Media Day, and he said he was going to go down to 108. So those 2, I mean, if they're healthy and good to go, they could definitely cause some damage here at 106 pounds. You also have a guy, Trenton Donahue from Du Bois, who was a state qualifier last year out of District 9, and he's in the mix. He's the 4th seed. So overall, you got a good mix of Pennsylvania wrestlers with Curtis Phipps leading the way.
And you got a lot of unseeded freshmen in here, especially in the lighter weights, that could make some noise. You look at Carter Dybert as well as Seneca Valley's Alejandro Hero Rondon, the 2 guys who wrestled already this year in a tight match. They could make some noise in this weight class. Yeah,
Gary Steen from Reynolds, he's another one I'm keeping an eye on. Matt Vulock from Pope John Paul, another one I'm keeping an eye on. And Case Sabidra from Derry, another guy I'm keeping an eye on. He's a junior down here at 108 pounds. So, there's no shortage of talent here just from Pennsylvania. As we said, with this tournament, they have a record number of teams this year at the POWERade tournament. There are 52 teams competing at the POWERade tournament, and a lot of them are from outside of Pennsylvania. But it's going to be a fun one to kick off at 106.
113 pounds, Kurt McHenry of St. Paul's, Maryland, is your top seed. Also the top guy in the nation, I believe, correct?
Oh, yeah. He's the top. McNasty's the top guy in the world right now. So, yeah, he's pretty good.
Bo Bayless of Reynolds is your number 2. Ryan Sullivan of Shaler is your number 3 seed. And Frankie Benora of Moon is your number 4. Any other names you're really looking for in this weight class?
No, Kurt McHenry's really good. So I'm looking forward to seeing him go. And I saw him multiple times throughout his high school career. And he's really, really tough. And I think 113 is his for the taking. I don't really see anyone challenging him. Bo Bayless is a state champion at 113 pounds, but McHenry's on a different level. But I think you have a nice mix-up between Double A and Triple A with some of these guys. As you said, Ryan Sullivan, he was a state runner-up last year at 106 pounds. Frankie Benora from Moon, also a state medalist, and Christian Fisher, a state medalist last year. So that's a really nice kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 punch for Pennsylvania. But you got some other guys in the weight. Not a whole lot of depth here for Pennsylvania, I would say. One guy I'm going to keep an eye on is Gianni Martini from Trinity. He's down to 113 this past week. And Sammy Starr from Kiski. He's registered to compete for.
He'll be good to go.
He's in the seating, so he's in the list. So I'm assuming he's going to go, and I'd like to see how he is health wise and see if he can pick up a few wins for Kiski. And you got Ian Oswalt from Burrell as well as another freshman there. So definitely guys to keep an eye on.
120 pounds, Lewis Newell of Seneca Valley. He's your top seed. Logan Macri of Canon-McMillan is your number 2. Doug Zapp of Downingtown West is your 3. despite being a state champion, he is your number 3 seed, and Darren Miller of Kiski is your 4th.
Yeah, I mean, with the way that the POWERade does its seedings, a lot of it is based on your past accomplishments at POWERade, so that brings a lot of weight. Doug Zapp, despite the fact that he was a state champion, he is the 3rd seed. He has, he's obviously very talented wrestler, and he was 126. He and Logan actually both were 126 earlier this year, and they both wrestled the Cumberland Valley Kickoff Classic, finishing 2nd and 3rd. Strawn Pearson was the champion there. But Lewis Newell, as we talked to Coach Wildrick last week, and he's down to 120, where I think he's going to be very dangerous. Logan Mackery's down from 126. He was a runner-up last year at POWERade. This is his home gym. He's been there before. There's no reason to think that he can't do it again this year. But as you said, tough guys with Newell, Zapp, and Miller, just to name a few. I mean, we haven't even touched the 7th and 8th seed, Chase Shields from Bishop McDevitt, who was a state runner-up last year, and J.J. Wilson from Cedar Cliff, who was 6th at POWERade last year and a 2-time state qualifier.
And where does Wyatt Henson go into this bracket? He's unseeded as a freshman, and most freshmen are unseeded. Where is he going to fall into this?
Well, and then not only Wyatt Henson, because Wyatt Henson deserves to be in that conversation, but then you have Cam Enriquez from Stroudsburg, a guy who was in the state semifinals last year. He was 1 match away from the state finals. Okay, he finished 6th in the state last year, unseeded. At 120 pounds. So wow. You're talking about some really talented guys that are sitting that could be knocking off, some of these top 8 seeds pretty early on. So Wyatt Henson, Cam Enriquez, Kyle Bush from Ridgeway, he was a state qualifier. Andrew Ishko from Reynolds, another state medalist. He finished 7th in the state last year, not seeded. Nathan Luquez from Pine Richlands in there. Wyatt Lutz. This was I got some chatter on the Twitter about Wyatt Lutz not being seeded. He's ranked 2nd in the state, and he was 3rd in the state last year for Montoursville, but he's not seeded.
How does that fall through the cracks?
Well, I don't think it necessarily falls through the cracks as opposed to Wyatt did not place at the POWERade last year. J.J. Wilson did. Chase Shields was a state runner-up. He beat Wyatt Lutz in the state semis, so you give Shields the nod over there, and he's 7th. And J.J. Wilson, being the fact that he was a POWERade placer, that puts him up there. So I'm not saying, oh my God, that's crazy. I'm just saying that's how deep 120 is if you look at you have several state medalists that aren't in the top 8.
Any other names that you're looking at as well at 120?
I mean, we could talk about 120 for a whole episode here. You got Trent Bechtold from Burrell, a 2-time state qualifier. He's a senior this year for Burrell. He's in there at 120. You got that freshman, as we just mentioned, Ty Simmerman from Derry. He's in there. And Gabe Willishell from Greater Latrobe, guy who I think is sort of a dark horse here at 120 pounds. He could knock off a few guys here at 120 pounds, but the depth here is it's quite insane, and I'm really looking forward to 120.
Do you think Willishell will go down to 113?
No, I think he's a 120 pounder. I can't see him. I saw him at the media day, and he looked big. He looked like he's kind of funky looking. He's a little bit taller, a little bit longer, so I don't think he has much weight to shake off him. So I think 120 is as low as he's going to go.
And if that is the case, AAA WPIAL is going to be loaded if all these guys stay at that weight. I'd imagine Darren Miller may go down to 113, but overall, if these guys all stay, it's going to be quite a weight class.
Yeah, it is.
And now let's move into the 126-pound bracket. And joining us for the 126-pound bracket before we get into the discussion is the top seed, Gavin Teasdale at Jefferson Morgan. Gavin, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Well,
Gavin, you're coming in with 3 POWERade championships, going for your 4th. Are you feeling any pressure at all going into this week?
No, the same I have been for the last 3 years. Just going into every match like it's the same tournament, whether it's a dual match or a toughest tournament or second toughest tournament in the country. Just wrestling the same way. I mean, my training's been good, so my coaching's been good, so everything's been good. And just going to go into the tournament with the mindset of beating everyone.
You decide
scoring points.
You decided to move down to 126 pounds. Is this your weight for the rest of the season, you think?
Yeah, I'm not too sure on that yet, but probably, most likely, yes.
Part of that move, I'm sure, was, obviously you had a little bit of tough time at 132 pounds with Colton Camacho in your match. Talk a little about that match. Did you expect him to test you the way he did?
Well, no. we practice a lot sometimes, but that's no excuse. But I just didn't really attack like I should have. I got to be more prepared for when people try to back up on me or try to, you know what I mean, not get to their offense. I just got to be more, more getting to it quicker. And I don't know, I don't really know how to describe it, but I didn't wrestle like I should have.
And Gavin, you look at the field at 126, you got Sammy Hilligus, who's a sophomore now. He's a returning POWERade state champion, undefeated. He's there. You got Bo Bartlett for Wyman Seminary. And of course, last year, everyone thought you were going to see Bo in the finals, and Logan Macri spoiled that for him. What do you like most about this 126 pound bracket? Because it's very deep.
Yeah. I knew either way that went, it was going to be tough. So just going to the POWERade tournament, making sure my training's good, my conditioning's up. Just really not even thinking of it as a different tournament. Just thinking of it just another high school tournament throughout the season. Not even focused on the competition I'll have.
And when you talked about, whatever weight you went to, 132, you got Joey Silva there. And I know on Twitter you said, hey, let's do it. I'm going to be wrestling at 126. You weren't shy about it, saying, hey, let's go, let's go and, see who's the best. Yeah.
I mean, I think the big thing was it was a done deal that I was going to be up at 132, which I would be if it was 132. With almost 2 pounds, because my natural weight's usually around 33, right around there, 32, 33. So I'd have no problem if it was 32, but I'd known 2 pounds. I was 28's a perfect weight for me. So I just went to my most competitive weight.
And you talk about this season. I mean, obviously, POWERade's been one of the toughest tournaments that you've faced in your career. Especially coming off that loss at Who's Number One to Pat Glory, a guy who you faced in the POWERade twice before. What did you take away from that match? Because you were in about 16 different shots on him and just weren't able to get away with the takedowns. What did you take away from that match at the Snake Pit?
Well, I think the obvious is finishing my shots, but even beyond that is just my conditioning. Well, definitely, because I got a little bit tired in that third period. So that was definitely worked on throughout the months, after Who's Number One. Well, I don't know. Season's kind of different than one match, I think. So instead of wrestling or focus on 1 6-minute match, I'm focused on throughout the whole year and taking it a match at a time. And I don't know, just wrestling. I guess I wrestle different in season. I don't know.
Yeah, you haven't fared well at the Snake Pit, so hopefully you don't have to go back there again. At least not in high school. So that's a good thing.
My best tournament.
When you talk about POWERade, I would say is probably your best showing. Every year at POWERade, you just get the job done. It doesn't matter who's in the finals or who you got. All the way from the freshman to your junior year, you just really did well and thrived at the POWERade. Is that a tournament that you really like? I mean, it's kind of close to you, and it's you got a lot of friends and family and fans there. Is that a tournament that you really enjoy competing in?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, our school said we could pick up one tough tournament to go to, and I think it was out of probably that or Ironman or POWERade, and I was just since POWERade's right in the backyard, I'd rather go to POWERade just because Canon-Mac and even when I was in junior high and elementary, I always used to go watch the finals of POWERade. All them guys wrestle, Nolf, Chenzo, all them guys.
Now, Gavin, Jeff mentioned a couple of guys that you may see: Sam Hilligus, Bo Bartlett. And I don't want you to look too far ahead, but have you wrestled either of those guys in the past? Are you familiar with their styles at all?
No, I really haven't. I mean, you watch a few of their matches, but I really haven't paid close attention to it. But just going out and wrestling the exact same way is my style that I'm used to wrestling.
You've had the opportunity to win 3 POWERade championships. You've won 3 state tournaments to date. How do they compare? I mean, everybody says the POWERade is just as tough, if not tougher, sometimes than a state tournament. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, I definitely think it's honestly tougher than the state tournament because every year, at my state tournament, the kids that got 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th in my POWERade bracket placed 7th, 6th, 7th, 8th, right around there. So I have the same exact competition as I would at the state tournament. And I think like the POWERade test gives you even like a more confidence boost leading into like throughout like the rest of the season, or winning that shows you can win like a state title like easily, or I don't know. I just look at it like it's just like another event getting better, you know?
Sure. Now, this past off season, you decided to commit to Penn State. Talk a little bit about that decision. You were originally going to go to Iowa. Why'd you change your mind and go to Penn State?
I just liked it better. I think it fit my style better. I like the atmosphere better. PA, I like it better. Just all played a factor in my decision, and I just liked it.
Now, Gavin, you're in your fourth year now. Everyone always makes the comparisons. Kerry Cole, last Jefferson Morgan wrestler, to win 4 undefeated state titles. Do you feel like any extra added pressure on you this year, knowing you are undefeated in your final season? Is there any type of pressure that you feel, or are you just taking it one match at a time?
No, I don't think there's any pressure. I feel when I'm wrestling the toughest competition in practice, leading up to like an event, I think that's like the biggest confidence for me, because I'm not even focused on. I'm just focused on getting better in practice. Like I had guys come in like Max Mira, and like Cam Coy, like recording, like all the guys that I've been wrestling around with, like my coaches, my assistant coach, past JM wrestlers, just everyone just training like so much to make sure my conditioning, like my pace and everything's there, like leading for this tournament. So I definitely think I'm just going in with confidence, not nervous or anything.
Well, Gavin, we wish you the best of luck as you go for your 4th POWERade Championship, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you here over the coming months as you go to get set for the WPIALs and state championships as well.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Gavin.
Thanks again to Gavin Teasdale for joining us, and let's jump into that weight class a little bit. We talked about the top guys, Teasdale, Hilligus, Bo Bartlett, and you could go on and on about those 3 just individuals right there, but there are several other guys in this weight class that makes it a deep weight.
Yeah, you got Cole Roan from Benton. He was a state runner-up last year. He was 5th at the POWERade last year as well. So Cole Roan adds more depth to that. Ed Scott, state 3rd last year at 113 pounds. He's up to 126. A guy who's a sophomore looking to get on the podium at POWERade. So, yeah, I mean, the top 5 seeds are really, really strong guys. And, I would say Gavin, Sammy and Bartlett are sort of in one tier, and you got Cole Roan and Ed Scott in another. But, those 3 at the top. Gavin's, as we just talked about, this is the toughest tournament he's going to face all year, and I think we said that a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So Sammy Hilligus is a guy who has not lost in his high school career. That's saying something in Pennsylvania. So he's really, really good. He just really doesn't get the respect I think he deserves. He was a champion here at POWERade a year ago, and Bo Bartlett is a guy who he's wrestled before. He lost to him at the Super 32 down in Greensboro, but these guys are going to come here to do battle and to win. So 126. If Gavin's going to win it, he's going to have to go through a whole heck of a lot.
Bartlett did defeat Hilligus in a Super 32 by a point, so that'll be something to watch out for whenever they potentially meet up in the semifinals. But yeah, Hilligus is putting his undefeated streak on the line just as Teasdale is in this one. One of those guys is going to have a loss on their high school record when this is all said and done.
That is correct, Greg. And I hate to say it, but I'm looking forward to seeing those
which one it is.
Whoever comes out on top.
And it could be both.
Could be.
Bartlett could ruin it for both of them.
That's true. That's very true. At least one of them is going to be walking away with a loss. So that's kind of crazy to think about. But you look at 126 pounds, and there's a lot of depth here. And we mentioned Kenny Heyman from Canon-McMillan. He knocked off Darren Miller against that dual meet with Kiski. With Logan Macri going down to 120, he has to go up to 126. So I'm curious to see how he does at 126. You got Mason Franks from Connellsville. He was a state qualifier last year. And a guy that I really like is from Stroudsburg. Those Stroudsburg guys don't get a lot of respect because it's their first year ever competing in the POWERade. You got to earn your stripes here, okay? Patrick Noonan from Stroudsburg is a state qualifier last year, but he had some monster wins this year. He beat Kenny Herman from Bethlehem Catholic, who actually beat Sean Pearson, who beat Logan Macri. So, you look at where he's going to rank in the state rank, he's going to be top 5 in the state, Patrick Noonan is. So, you're looking at a guy who's potentially entering the POWERade, top 5 in the state, unseeded. He could cause some issues at 126.
132 pounds, your top seed is Joey Silva. We talked about he and Teasdale potentially meeting up. That's not going to happen. Jordan Ward of Moeller is number 2. Caleb Morris of Waynesburg is 3. Colton Camacho of Franklin Regional, you're number 4.
Yeah, and this is going to be Joey Silva all day. For him, the Lake Highland Prep senior who's going to Michigan. Joey's really good. He's kind of like Kirk McHenry in that sense that he's just a step above the rest of the field here. Even Jordan Ward from Moeller, he's only a junior, and he finished 3rd last year at the POWERade. But Joey Silva's on a different level. We got to see him compete at Ironman a couple years in a row. We got to see him compete at who's number 1. He's clear head and shoulders above the rest of the field here. But you do have a few Pennsylvania guys that are looking to do well for themselves. Caleb Morris, I feel like we've been talking about him for a very long time. He's a 3-time state qualifier. He's yet to get on the podium, but he was a runner-up last year at POWERade. He had a really
great tournament.
Great tournament for him. He knocked off Mundy from North Carolina, which was a big win for him. Colton Camacho, though, he's a guy who I think is going to be in the mix this year at 132 pounds. As a junior, he was 6th at the POWERade last year, was a state qualifier. And Nick Coy from Penn Trafford, he drops down from 138. He's a 2-time state qualifier. He finished 8th last year at the POWERade. He's your 6th seed. Bodie Tolbert from Bishop McDevitt, he's a 7th seed. He was an 8th place finisher in states last year. I didn't see a whole lot out of him at the King of the Mountain tournament. I think he needs to pick it up a little bit if he wants to get on the podium at POWERade. But then you have Bryce Barclay from Ridgeway, who was also a state qualifier last year.
Should be a fun quarterfinal if Coy and Morris end up getting there to see who comes out on top of that one.
Yeah, and talk about another guy who's going to throw a wrench into 132 pounds, and there's no doubt about it. Carson Manville is going to be in that mix. Carson Manville from Wyoming Seminary is a freshman, unseeded. There's a good chance he ends up in the finals, depending on where he ends up on the bracket. He and Joey Silva are going to, if they do go at it, whatever round it is, they're going to put on a match. Carson Manville's the younger brother of Mason Manville, who's at Penn State and had a lot of experience at the POWERade. I don't know if you remember him pumping up the crowd after he beat Hidley. But no, Carson is really, really tough for a freshman. He's going to ruin a lot of people's days in the next couple days at POWERade. So I would keep an eye on him. And, like I said, I would not be surprised to see him in the finals against Joey Silva.
Any other names you're looking at 132?
I look at them all, Greg, but Dalton Woodrow from Du Bois is a 2-time state qualifier. He's there at 132. You got Michael Cassidy from Cedar Cliff, was a state qualifier 2 years ago. AJ Corrado from Burrell is a freshman. He's that second freshman for Burrell. And Garrett Reinsfelder from Shaler, a guy who's a senior now at 132. So there's a lot of names here, but Joey Silva is definitely the front runner.
6 guys who have won state championships go into 138 pounds. Your top seed, he didn't win a state title last year, but he has in the past. Cole Matthews of Reynolds, your number 1. Jack Davis of Wyoming Seminary, your number 2. Jackson Henson of Waynesburg is your 3. Noah Levitt of Kiski is your 4.
Yeah, talk about a deep weight class. I mean, you look at 26 and 38, and these two are really piquing my interest. Cole Matthews, he was a POWERade champion a year ago. He's a top seed. He was a state runner-up last year to Max Murin at 138. State champion his freshman year for Reynolds. Cole Matthews is staying home. He's going to Pitt. So this is going to be really close to where he's going to be for a while. And Jack Davis, he's a senior. He's also going to Pitt, which is kind of crazy. You got 2 potential teammates for future teammates going at it, which would be fun to see, especially for Coach Keith Gavin of the Pitt Panthers. But Jack Davis, former national prep champion, he was a runner-up here at POWERade last year, losing to Spencer Lee. Jackson Henson, sort of a dark horse, as I said, because he's from West Virginia. He's in Pennsylvania for his final season at Waynesburg, and Jackson Henson really did a good job at the Beast of the East this year. He's come away with a few wins that are notable. He beat Jared Papsey from Bethlehem Catholic. He was a 2-time West Virginia state champion. And then you got Noah Levitt, who's been a medalist the last 2 years at state tournament. He was 5th at the POWERade last year. So that's a lot of talent just in those top 4. It's going to be fun to see. I'd love to see Cole Matthews and Jackson Henson going at it.
And that doesn't even mention 5 through 8 seeds, all were state champions. and they're not even in the top 4 because they didn't wrestle in the POWERade before. But
right, and they're not from Pennsylvania. But
they're all state champions, so you got to give them their credit.
Yeah, sure you do. You got to give them some credit. I mean, we don't want to get them too much credit, but I mean, if you're not from Pennsylvania, I mean, if you win a state title in West Virginia, I mean, come on, how good are you? Right? No, I'm just kidding. You got Luke Martin then there from Parkersburg South. Parkersburg South is bringing a really, really tough team this year to POWERade. He was a state champion last year. Imran Hurd from St. Paul's was also a state champion in Maryland. And then you got River Curtis from Battlefield, Virginia, was also a state champion. But
Danner of Penfield, New York. Number 2 is Luke Kemmer of Hempfield. Number 3, Ricky Cabanelis of DePaul Catholic, New Jersey. And number 4 is Kai Belay of Luke Highland Prep. Kemmerer going in gets the high seeds usually, but he is one of those guys that looks at names and looks at where he's at in the bracket. Can he shake that off to have a strong POWERade tournament?
Well, he should call his former teammate Jared Vercleren, who's now at Penn State, and actually Jared's going to be wrestling in the Southern Scuffle, so I'm excited about that. But Luke Kemmer is going to, he's a second seed to Frankie Gissendaner. Do you remember that match last year with Jared Vercleren and Gissendaner?
Oh, yeah.
That was a marathon match. It was a good match. So Luke Kemmer is going to have his hands full here with Gissendaner, but. He's 4th at POWERade, a season ago. He's a 2-time state medalist. He's going to Pitt, so I think he's going to have his hands full, especially with some of the other guys in the weight class. You got Job Chisco from Penn Trafford, state qualifier, state medalist. He was actually a former POWERade champion. Do you remember? I mean, that's hard to believe. Job Chisco was a POWERade champion. I think it was 106.
Right.
A couple of years back, right? So, he's in there, and they got Cam Connor, who actually owns a win over Job Chisco from Kiski. He's the 6th seed, also a state qualifier. Guy here who I like is Ryan Vulock from Pope John Paul II. If you remember, he was ineligible last year after he transferred from North Penn to Pope John Paul. He's back in the lineup as a junior, guy who's highly regarded on the national level. This is really where he's going to have to prove himself. He wrestled in the Beast of the East, finished in the top 8, but did not come away with where he wanted to be. So can Ryan Vulock prove that he belongs in that state title contender conversation for Pennsylvania?
What other names are you looking at 145?
Well, a guy who I like is a 2-time state qualifier, Kobe Ho from Du Bois, and I think he's actually, I think he tweeted out something like, "Okay, POWERade, I see you're not seeding me," which is, I get it. It's fun, but I wouldn't get too worked up, especially when you're looking at the depth here. You got a Logan McLean from Ridgeway at 145 pounds. He was a state 7th place medalist. He's in the 8th seed. So, guys like Tanner Updegraff from Bishop McDevitt, he's a sophomore. I want to see how he does. Nick Acuna from Moon. So you're talking about a guy who used to be salty about not being seeded. I mean, Nick Acuna was a state medalist last year for Moon. He's not in the top 8, but he's there at 145. Hunter Michaels from Reynolds, a 2-time state qualifier. He's in the mix there. He's coming down from 152. And then Connor Keevan from Arlington Seminary, a sophomore guy who I've been able to watch seems like he's been around for the last 10 years. But yeah, they're going to throw some different looks at 145 pounds. I'm looking forward to it.
152, Josh Humphreys of Parkersburg South is your top seed. Justin McCoy of Chestnut Ridge, he's your number 2. Brock Godson of Bell Vernon, your number 3. And Caleb Hetrick of Brookville is your number 4.
And you heard Gavin talk about how tough POWERade is and how it's tougher than the state tournament. And just look at Justin McCoy as proof of that, right? Justin McCoy was 7th last year at the POWERade, won the state tournament. I mean, that's pretty incredible. You look at Josh Humphreys from Parkersburg South. As I said, they're bringing a really tough team. He was the runner-up last year to Cole Matthews. So, he and that was a really tight match. So, he respectfully, he earns that top seed for sure. Humphreys does. He was a state champion last year. But then Brock Godson from Bell Vernon, kind of flying under the radar a little bit after finishing 7th at the POWERade and then 5th in the state. So you look at, all these finishes, they finish lower in the POWERade than they do in the state. It's interesting to see that. Justin McCoy, 7th at POWERade, 1st in the state. Brock Godson, 7th at POWERade, 5th in the state. Caleb Hetrick, 8th at POWERade, 7th in the state. So POWERade's pretty dang tough here, Greg, and definitely a lot of other guys to keep an eye on. Corey Christie, as we talked about, from Burrell, he's a senior. Albert Taylor from Erie Prep is the 8th seed. He was a state qualifier last year. Jack Bloomer from Kiski, a sophomore now this year. How good can he be? He's sort of grown into his own and trying to live up to that Bloomer name. two freshmen that I'm going to have an eye on, actually three freshmen I'm going to be keeping a close eye on. Trey Kai from Mifflin County. He owns a win over Corey Christie, beat him at King and Mountain last 2 weeks ago. Cole Spencer from Pine Richland. You remember we were talking about him. He was one of our top incoming freshmen from PA Power Wrestling. He's down to 152 from 160. I think he could have a good tournament. And Lenny Pinto, Stroudsburg. Another Stroudsburg guy who's sort of on the back burner here for them. I think he could do well in his first POWERade tournament. And, of course, you have Trey Howard from Waynesburg, who is a Beast of the East medalist, and he's coming in here. He's looking for his first POWERade medal.
160 pounds, your top seed is Carter Staraki of Erie Prep. Number 2 is Zach Hartman of Bell Vernon. Number 3, Garrett Ninehouse of Canon-McMillan. And number 4 is Eric Bilick of Lake Highland Prep. Luke Stout of Mount Lebanon is your number 6. He and Ninehouse could potentially meet in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, and a lot of PA power here at 160, and that all starts with Carter Staraki, a guy who wrestled Cam Coy here last year, and Staraki ended up finishing 4th at the POWERade, was a state runner-up last year. I got to see him out in Fargo, looked really, really good. I think he's really one of the top juniors in the state and the nation right now, actually. Zach Hartman, Bell Vernon, a guy who's runner-up here at POWERade a season ago. He's a second seed, state qualifier, former state medalist. Garrett Ninehouse is only a sophomore. He and Staraki has done battle back and forth the last year, and Garrett's up to 160, and he's the the third seed, but he was 5th year last year, and he finished 3rd in state, so he was one behind Carter Staraki. A guy like Jake Hendricks from Wyoming Seminary, he was 3rd at POWERade last year. I'm kind of scratching my head why Jake Hendricks got the 5th seed. I thought maybe he could be a little bit higher up, but as you said, Luke Stout, he's been really, really strong and solid this year. He's picked up some pretty quality wins. If you remember at the Eastern area, he put a beating on Nick Delp. So I think that could be a potential good match, Luke Stout and Garrett Ninehouse in the quarterfinals. But it's 160 is definitely another weight class where the top couple guys there all are really going to be battling. I mean, you have Zach Hartman and Garrett Ninehouse. They wrestled in a dual meet last year when Bell Vernon and Canon Mac wrestled, and Zach Hartman controlled that match.
I think it's very more top heavy at 160 than it is in other weight classes, and it should be interesting to see how those big guys all wrestle one another.
Yeah, and I look at just throughout the rest of the guys, and there's not a whole lot of people that stick out on the page to me other than those top 8 seeds. But you have Nick Delp from Kiski, a sophomore, and then you have Jake Pollock from Shaler, who's a junior. That's some of the guys that could make some noise. So, yeah, 160, definitely top heavy.
170 pounds, Kyle Hammond of Waynesburg is your top seed. Jared McGill of Chestnut Ridge, your number 2. Chris Cantorino of Clovis West is your 3rd. And Jason Montgomery of Bethel Park, your number 4.
Yeah, and we saw Jared McGill and Jason Montgomery going at it at the King of the Mountain Finals. McGill looked really, really sharp. Kyle Hammett, I'd love to see him in the top spot here for Waynesburg. He was 5th at the POWERade last year, has not placed at the PIAA state tournament yet. Guy who's been very close before. And him and Jared McGill are kind of neck and neck. Jared's a 2-time state medalist for Chestnut Ridge, and Jason Montgomery's a Bethel Park senior. He was 7th in the state last year, did not place at POWERade. He's going to UPenn next year to continue his education and athletic career. And Scott Joel from Bell Vernon is the 6th seed.
If you look at all 14 weight classes, would you say this one is probably the weakest of the 14? Now, not to take anything away because all 14 are tough, but if you had to rank them, would you say 170 is probably at the more of the bottom level?
Yeah. I mean, I would just especially like nationally as well. I mean, we're looking at some of the national, powerhouses that we talk about with Lake Highland Prep and Wyoming Seminary. Yeah, 170 is definitely a little bit of a weaker weight class. I mean, you could say 106s too, but that's all subjective. From where I'm sitting, 170, I probably couldn't win it right now with Kyle Hammett and Jared McGill there.
We couldn't win any of them.
Well, no, let's be honest, we couldn't win 106. Right? let's be serious. But yeah, when you look at 170, I agree that you have a guy like Scott Joel, who I like. Scott Joel, tough wrestler, 6th seed, but hasn't made it to. You have some places where you have state third place medalists not in the top 8.
You have 4 state champions as 5, 6, 7, and 8 seeds in one bracket.
Sure, yeah.
And you have somebody who hasn't even made a state tournament or placed a POWERade as a top 6 wrestler. So.
Hey, look, you opened the can of worms here. You're talking about weak brackets at the POWERade, and a weak bracket at the POWERade is still better than some regional brackets. Okay, so let's be honest here for a second.
I did start with that though.
Yeah, I guess you're right. You did.
182 pounds, Trent Hidley of Mifflin County, your top seed. Cody Mulligan of Sagertown, number 2. Tim Wallace of Albert Gallatin, your number 3. Darian Roberts of Wyoming Seminary, your number 4.
Yeah, and this could be, and it should be, a rematch from the King of the Mountain Finals where Trent Hidley defeated Cody Mulligan. Those two wrestled in a really, really strong physical match. We were able to talk to Trent Hidley after the match, and he said he loved it. It was a good test for him. But Cody Mulligan's going to be hungry for more. He wants a rematch, I'm sure, and he's going to have his opportunity to do it here. He's going to have to get to the finals again. He was here last year. He lost to Nino Bonacorsi in an ultimate tiebreaker. Cody Mulligan's a guy who's a Super 32 champion. He's going to Edinburgh. I love the way he wrestles. He just sort of, grinds people down and gets them to where he wants them to be. But Trent Hidley's he's had his number. I mean, just in the last week, he did really well against him. Tim Wallace, a guy who almost beat Trent Hidley last year at the POWERade. He was very close to pulling an upset. Tim Wallace, and of course, he finished 3rd in the state last year, almost made it to the state finals. Darian Roberts from Wyoming Seminary, he's been around for, it seems like a long time. He's the 4th seed. He was 3rd in national prep last year. And Luigi Yates from Erie Prep, he's a state medalist. He finished 8th in the state last year, and he's going to be the 5th seed. Donovan Ball from Cedar Cliff, 8th seed, guy to keep an eye on.
Looking at 195 pounds, Gavin Hoffman of Montoursville, your number 1. Jake Thompson of Moeller, your number 2. Ryan Reyes of Clovis West, number 3. And Austin Cooley of Wyoming Seminary, your number 4.
Yeah, so we talked about how tough the POWERade tournament is. Let me just give you some perspective here. Gavin Hoffman's won 2 PIAA state championships and a world bronze medal. Has not won the POWERade yet. Huh. So that's a good indication of how tough this tournament is. Gavin Hoffman last year was a runner-up. He lost to Jake Woodley in the finals. That was a tough match. That 195-pound bracket had 3 state champions in it. Yep. You had Jake Woodley, Cole Nye, and Gavin Hoffman. Gavin was second to Jake Woodley. He would go on to win his second state title. But Gavin's, he's definitely the clear favorite here at 195. Jake Thompson was 7th last year at POWERade. He's in a tough weight class. Xavier Molnar from Brookville, another guy I like. I think he's poised. He has a really, really strong mullet. I don't know if he still has the mullet or not, but if he does, he's probably going to do really well.
That's the whole reason, right?
Well, yeah, other than the fact that he has a strong mullet. Nathan Mankey from North Hills was 7th last year at POWERade. He's a 6th seed. Nate Ansell from Connellsville was a state qualifier. He's the 7th seed. And Danny Starr from Kiski is your 8th seed.
Anyone else at 195 that you would like to mention?
Yeah, I mean, Jared Miller from Reynolds has been in the mix, and a guy who I want to see compete is a sophomore, Dorian Crosby from Erie Prep, a guy who is a really, really good PJW wrestler in his first year starting for Cathedral Prep. So I'm excited to see how he does.
220 pounds, your top seed is Braxton Amos of Parkersburg South. Number 2 is Ben Golden of Lake Highland Prep. Number 3, Ian Edenfield of Laurel Highlands. Number 4, Tyler Cook of Brookville. Edenfield, we didn't really talk about him too much. He was at Ironman, actually. We mentioned there wasn't much WPIAL action there, but he was there. So he's looking to try to build upon his Ironman performance.
Yeah, he was 5th there at the Ironman and at the Beast. And, it's a shame for him because he's seen Ben Golden from Lake Highland Prep in now 3 different tournaments, and they're from Florida. So you have Florida and Pennsylvania, but yet somehow you're all wrestling in the same tournament. He's definitely going to be in a position where Braxton Amos is really, really tough. He's a sophomore, but he's really, really good. He won the Ironman. Ben Golden was a Walsh Jesuit Ironman runner-up as well. He was a state champion at Lake Highland Prep. Ian Edenfield was a state runner-up, 3rd seed this year. Tyler Cook, 2-time state medalist. He was 7th at the POWERade last year as a 4th seed. Dom DeLuca from Darien, guy I really like. He's really, really tall and really, really tough and strong. So, and he doesn't have to cut a whole lot to get to 220, but he's too big for 195. So Dom is the 5th seed. He was a state 3rd place finisher last year. So could he really cause some noise here? And could he be the highest placing Pennsylvania wrestler? I don't know.
Should be fun to watch and see how they break down at 220 pounds. 285 pounds, your top seed is Josiah Jones of Bishop McCourt. Number 2, Kawan DeBow of Erie Prep. Number 3, Antonio Kutri of Wyoming Seminary. And number 4, Kurt Ruff of Lake Highland Prep.
Josiah Jones has finished second in almost every single tournament he's wrestled, including the POWERade and state tournament. He's a 2-time state runner-up. He's a POWERade runner-up. Josiah Jones, though, is moving up to 285. He was at 220 last year. This year he's competing at 285 pounds. I'm not sure if that's a weight that he's going to stay at or not, but he is there for the POWERade tournament. He's the top seed, rightfully so. But Quan DeBow from Erie Prep, he's no stranger to success. He's a 2-time state medalist. He's placed every year. He's going to states. He was 4th at POWERade last year, and he's a 2nd seed. So I think he's going to have a good tournament. And Corey Dotson from Albert Gallatin, 6th seed, always been really close. A guy who I think has really sparked my interest at the heavyweight, because heavyweight in the WPIAL this year is a little bit, not as deep at all compared to last year. But Nathan Hoagland from Mount Lebanon.
He'll see how he does. Any other names you're looking at, 285?
The 8th seed is Jesse Cook from Downtown West. He was a regional qualifier. Logan Petrosky from Bell Vernon, a guy who has not been in the lineup for Bell Vernon for several years, but he's there competing. Kobe Whitehill from Brookville, a guy Eric Knopfschneider is obsessed with. He loves Kobe Whitehill. He says I completely don't give him enough credit because I missed him I don't think I did miss him on the top incoming freshman, to tell you the truth. But Kobe Whitehill from Brookville, he's a sophomore now. He could make some noise. And also another young guy is Isaiah Vance from Hempfield. He's the 2nd Hempfield guy we talked about as a freshman. Isaiah Vance is undefeated on the year. And could he pull some upsets as a freshman at heavyweight? I don't know. Only time will tell.
Yeah, it's a tough task to do at the heavier weights, but we'll see how it all turns out. 52 teams at the POWERade, as Jeff mentioned a little bit earlier. 15 of those are new to this year. They've wrestled there in the past. Some have wrestled there in the past, like a Mount Lebanon, or Derry, but they are back here this year. So wrestling gets underway at 8:15 on Friday. Quarterfinals at 7:30. Semifinals 11 a.m. Saturday. Consolation finals 4:30 Saturday. Finals are at 7.
And I'm going to be there all day long. And so are you. I'm going to be there tomorrow. So I'm going to be there Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So be sure to stop by the PA Power Wrestling booth outside. We're going to have that out in the lobby. You can buy a shirt, buy socks. You can sign up for rankings. You can do it all there.
Make sure you guys stop by, show some support and some love, and make sure you say hi to Jeff as well, because he looks forward to meeting every one of you face to face.
No, I won't be there. I'll be bouncing around. I'll be with Mark Billett, telling him where to take pictures of, who to take pictures of. This year we're implementing a walkie-talkie system where so instead of me running around trying to find Mark, I'm just going to walkie-talkie to him and say, "Hey, Mark, go shoot Mat 7." It's actually an ingenious idea on my part, or maybe I'm just getting lazy.
I mean, it took you this long to figure that out?
Yeah, I've been covering POWERade for almost 10
How many years?
Almost 10.
Almost 10.
Yeah.
You just now figured that out, huh?
Mm-hmm.
You enjoyed the exercise. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, well,
you enjoyed running back and forth throughout the gym.
I think I need to. I can remember wrestling in that tournament my senior year and being terrified of who I was going to wrestle. And I remember running in the hallway, sprinting, and I'm like, man, now 10 years later, 15 years later, I'm like, man, these steps are getting a little bit harder to do every year, but I'm still young and spry. So Mark Billett, on the other hand, you got to be careful with him.
That's right.
He's fragile.
Got to respect your elders, right?
Certainly, yeah. My father will be there as well. So that's two. I mean, talk about two old heads. Those two can talk about wrestling back in the 1940s. They could go on for hours.
Well, it's a good thing they're not on the show today, right? Or else we would have to cut them off at some point.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. I've had to do that several times. So you can come say hi to Tom Upson, the patriarch of PA Power Wrestling, right? at the POWERade tournament. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, Greg. Always a fantastic tournament. I love this tournament. It's my favorite tournament of the year. So yeah, we're just getting ready.
And if you're looking for a full recap of the tournament, make sure you join us next Wednesday. Since New Year's is on Monday, we'll come back to you on Wednesday to recap the tournament.
That's right, Greg. And you can follow along all the POWERade action and really all the action going on this weekend at PA Power Wrestle on Twitter. You can go to PAPowerWrestling.com for all your wrestling needs. We're going to have updated rankings before the POWERade tournament. We're even going to have team rankings coming out here, Greg. So I know a lot of people have been asking me for team rankings. I wanted to hold off until we had a little bit more results. You know, I hate to put out results or rankings without too many results. So I feel like I have a good amount now, so I can do that. So, but be sure to follow along all the action on PA Power Wrestle as we're at POWERade.
Thanks again to Gavin Teasdale for joining us on the show. For my broadcast partner, Jeff Upson, I'm Greg Warnock. Thanks for joining us here on WarUp on the WPIAL.